We are on day 24 of the partial government shutdown, the longest running shutdown in history. The longer this stretches on, the more and more limited the options become for President Trump. So we whittled it down in this morning's Power Up to essentially 5 different options that the president has in order to reopen the government. The least likely option that we think is the path forward at the moment is compromise, contrary to People's Popular's belief of how the government functions. And that's because Trump is very unlikely to compromise unless Democrats are willing to soften their position on, providing funding to build the wall. And Democrats have indicated that that's a non-starter, that they're not going to give him $5.5 billion. They're not going to soften their stance because they find this wall to be immoral. Second least likely option here is the president declaring a national emergency. Last week, we thought this was an imminent option, but this morning, the president indicated that it's no longer a path that he's looking to consider.
I'm not looking to call a national emergency. This is so simple, you shouldn't have to.
The third option here, which was floated to me from a Democratic lawmaker who encouraged me to reach out to the unions to see if TSA workers and air traffic controllers were about to go on strike. There is actually this federal prohibition which prohibits people who work for the federal government from striking. So that could be a potential, court challenge. So I think what we might see is people who do work for the government eventually quitting and taking up other jobs. As the lines get longer and longer and more airports close, I think we get closer and closer to that option. It could cause a serious internal crisis and commotion and public outrage at the president, putting pressure on him to get business back to usual. The likeliest option that we have here is the current scenario that we all find ourselves in, which is keeping the government shut down. Trump is not budging on his demands for wall funding. Democrats' caucus is stronger than ever and more united than ever in claiming that this wall is immoral and making sure that they don't provide the president with any funding to build a wall along the southern border. But the longer the government continues to stay closed, the more and more that fuels negative public opinion, and the more and more various government services start to no longer to be able to serve the American public. We're 3 weeks in now, and Trump is losing the PR battle. We had a Washington Post ABC News poll come out, and it said that the majority of Americans are blaming Trump and the Republican Party for this shutdown. While Trump might be losing the PR battle, there are different political implications for Trump than there are for Democrats. First of all, this story cannibalizes other stories that cable news and the media could be dedicating their resources towards that Trump probably wouldn't want us to be focusing on. Any world that the media is spending less time talking about Russia, the better for the president. Additionally, as we head into the 2020 elections, this is obviously a really good issue for the president and allows him to speak directly to his base and continue to throw out red meat by showing his supporters that he's fighting for this wall for border security. At the same time, it's not as strong of a talking point for Democrats. It overshadows their newfound power in Congress. It overshadows all the investigations into President Trump, and then it has them run the risk of looking a little weaker on border security, which could be potentially problematic going into 2020 for Dems.